So, let's see, any other comments you want to make about the VCS system?
When we launched, we thought we could do about 16 games. We launched with 8. And we thought that the purchase of the console, that there would be 3 cartridges.
Yeah.
And as a result, the first half of the units that sold sucked all the cartridges off. It was what I call a $5 million mistake because, we just didn't have enough cartridges.
Yeah, and the other thing, I got to give Steve Mayer and Ron Milner and Joe DeCour the credit that I believe their design goals, and you can talk to it, was for minimizing the semiconductor content and hence cost of the product. So it was super, super simplified. Whereas the classic designs that had memory map, they had sprites and pixels that assumed certain play features in hardware. We had none of that. So because we were so bare, it turned out, I'm sure Steve is taking credit for it now, it was all in the plan, but it wound up being the most flexible system ever, right, Steve?
By
So
software.
that originally it was not going to be a cartridge-based system. That Al, every time they wanted to bring a new game out, stun
big whole
cycle
new
things,
chip.
a whole new chip. And there was the HP calculator where they had a microprocessor and you could become a business calculator
Right.
or an engineering calculator just by changing the ROM chip. So originally we thought that this was not going to have a cartridge on it, and this was just going to make Al's life just so much easier. But very shortly to the design, we realized that putting the cartridges on it was the way to go. And we realized it because Al and Nolan led engineering into every part of the business decision. So engineering really understood the whole business.
It was a flat organization, like a proper Silicon Valley company. We didn't have, now one of the problems, we had no secrets. And we used to say that our biggest secret is that we have no secrets. So we got to keep that a secret. And we would put out misinformation to get the competition distracted because we couldn't keep it.
And then if you haven't ever done a consumer product, you have a $200 retail, which was set by Pong. So if we're going to do this as a $200 device, you figure out the retail markup, and then you start saying, okay, here's the board, here's the power supply, here's the overhead, and what was left was something like $25 for all the silicon.
Yeah.
And that defined what it was going to be. So Chuck and the 6502 was the only possibility for making this happen.
Well, I remember Joe Keenan coming in and complaining. He said, let me get this straight, Al. We're going to do this new product and it's going to be sole sourced to a 6502 that's now owned by Jack Trammell. Yeah, it's going to be sole sourced to Jack. I go, well, you kinda. He says, no, we're not. He said, what would if we use a 6800? What would it do? Well, the pong ball would move about like that, and the tanks might move. And he says, well, I said, what if we got a second source? And he says, well, that might work. So that's how, we got to the second source.
I'm
But-
curious, how many people here program the VCS? It's not so many.
It's hard to program.
It's very hard to program. Imagine drawing with a beam of light. I mean, that's really chasing the beam. I think was. Sorry. Well, how many had a VCS? Okay. So when some of the things that came out of software, you have to understand this was surprised even you when you saw things that the software engineers were actually, if you read the code where they were programming, there wasn't comments in the code like you would normally do. There were numbers, and they were counting the number of cycles across the screen to know where the beam was at a given time, so they could change the color or change the object. So they were literally drawing as the beam was crossing
Right,
the
and when
screen,
vertical
which
sync
they
came
never
around,
thought about.
Vertical sync was in software.
And
Yeah.
the whole total memory for the whole system of RAM memory was 128 bytes.
Bytes.
And that included all the stacks for the computer and all the temporary memory. The cartridges, I think, were 2K, and then eventually 4K.
2K went to 4K later. And Larry Wagner came up with a chess game in that 128K.
How do you do
bytes.
that? There's 64 characters, there's 32 bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it was what we couldn't sell any of them, but Nolan and I loved it. It was great. It was wonderful. It's not our market, but it beat Sargon.
I bought one.
I did too.